is a decent clip. For a long time, Lawrence O'Donnell, who obviously, I mean, when I think of people I share a politics and a sensibility with, I don't often think of Lawrence O'Donnell. But this shows a couple of things. As he's on C-SPAN and he's talking about socialism. One, as Corey Robin pointed out yesterday, the Cortez win, as evidenced by the Krugman column. Paul Krugman wrote a column going, really her policy platform's not that radical at all. Things like Medicare for All, which he was a little slippery on, actually. He tried to redefine Medicare for All. But that being said, all of these things that, by the way, in 2016, Krugman was saying were radical, wrong-headed, potentially even dangerous when Bernie was running on them, all of a sudden are normal and not particularly controversial. Now, one track we can do is we can ding Krugman for the hypocrisy, and that's fine. Or we can do it the Robin way and say, look at the amount of lessening of anxiety and neurosis of even like the most tense liberal technocratic elites, like a Paul Krugman, who's wrong on many things, but I think does have some, I wouldn't put him in a category of somebody who just doesn't care or is opposed to social provisions. I mean, we have different politics, radically different politics, but I don't think Krugman is necessarily, as evidenced by that column, he's not necessarily opposed to some of these things, and that speaks well of him. And his fear of embracing actual smart, necessary policies that are, in fact, in reality, moderate. Medicare for All is moderate. Federal job guarantee is moderate. These are the basic things we'll need to do if we want to preserve living standards and democracy in the 21st century. This stuff is the bare minimum. It's letting people open up a bit. And I will say, for a long time, Lawrence O'Donnell, and I think, obviously his politics are quite moderate, and his background is as a writer, including of the West Wing, which yuck. But, and as a staffer for Daniel Patrick Moynihan, this is no remote radical. But he, for a long time, has said, look, I'm a democratic socialist because I support Scandinavian-style programs. And here he is on C-SPAN saying people need to become adults about socialism.
Semantics. This socialism in the 1950s in America became a bad word, and we then became anti-intellectual about socialism. We as a country stopped thinking about what it actually is and just adopted, for the most part, a posture of fear against the word and the concept socialism. And so when Medicare was proposed in the 1960s, the argument against it was essentially it's socialism. That was the entire argument. And it was kind of surprising that that argument didn't work, especially because it was true. Medicare is socialism, and everyone on Medicare in this country is the beneficiary of a very smart socialistic program called Medicare. And to deny that it's socialism is to deny economic literacy. But that's what our politics does. And so socialism, it turns out, is not terrifying if you know what it is. The other thing about socialism is that it's all around us in the United States, and it has been for most of the 20th century, and our country wouldn't work without it. Every country in the world is now what economists call a mixed economy, meaning they are mixes to varying degrees of capitalism and socialism. And Cuba is at one extreme of socialism with very little capitalism, and the United States is in an area that's much more toward the middle. Think about our healthcare system. Almost half of the spending in the American healthcare system is government spending. That is socialistic spending, every single penny of it. So is our healthcare system socialist? No. Is our healthcare system capitalist? No. Is our healthcare system socialistic? Yes, it is. Does our healthcare system have capitalistic elements? Yes, it does. And so people have to grow up They have to drop their fear of the word. They have to look at the socialism that they like. They have to look at the socialism that they think is smart. They have to look at socialism like Social Security and other socialistic programs that they don't even know are socialistic programs, and relax about the word and make adult decisions about just how much socialism is the right mix for this economy and how much capitalism is the right mix. And the truth of it is, we cannot run this country without both of them.
That's exactly right, and incredibly well put. And I also and excellent, because look, that's Lawrence O'Donnell's job. Lawrence O'Donnell is a moderate. He probably maybe I guess he does consider himself something of a liberal or democratic socialist. I could imagine any number of areas where we probably disagree. And I'm somebody who thinks that absolutely, in order to really empower a democratic culture and to deliver real things, you need, as an example, healthcare needs to be 100% socialistic. Broadband, the internet needs to be 100% socialistic. Energy needs to be commons-based and socialistic. Water, housing, at the very least, significantly more aggressively socialistic. But he is absolutely right, and doing his job, especially when you consider some of the kind of hysterics and histrionics that even people around the Clinton campaign in 2016 were spewing. That yes, you need to be an adult and you need to recognize that some version writ large of socialism, which is a very, very broad term. There's obviously it's anchored and has a profound connection to Marx Engels tradition. There's also
It preceded them.
There's manifestations of Islamic socialism, there's Christian socialism, there's Fabian humanist socialism. There's a lot of different traditions, but anybody who identifies on any form of the left is definitely partially socialistic. I would think in almost in all cases in the United States, you should be more socialistic, and you shouldn't leave out Marx because of the structural analysis of how capitalism works. And also, for the more broad American public, what Lawrence O'Donnell did there, and you know, it really underscores how pathetic Nancy Pelosi's responses on some of these things have been, is just remind you that many of the best things in American life and things that have created some of the bare minimal decency in a obviously highly unequal, deeply racist, and much more market-oriented and using government to prop oligarchy and market society and policy framework. But the good things, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, yes, they're socialist programs. The best parts of our healthcare system are socialistic. People benefit from forms of socialism and commons every single day. And if you are on anywhere in the left map, you definitionally support that. And this also does some work too, I think, to, undermining some of the silliness and histrionics of the dark web and, the communist Maoists and all of that silliness.
Yeah, I just want to speak to the fear that I think people on the left have when we see terms like this, whether it's abolish ICE or Medicare for all or socialism.
Right.
When they start entering the mainstream conversation, then getting watered down. That is basically just a new stage that we have to struggle in, but it's one that we earned, right? Like that we can force these things into the consciousness, even to get watered down, is a sign of strength. And the more power we have, the less they'll get watered down when we eventually begin to enact.
You want an argument where I'm saying I'm a radically left, I am a radically different type of socialist than Lawrence O'Donnell. He's not a socialist. Let's police those borders. No. And by the way, the same logic that I will do by my logic that I've used to critique as an example Islamophobia, which is saying first of all, somebody outside of that tradition suggesting who is and isn't taking their faith seriously or isn't a real Muslim is ludicrous. But generally speaking, you do take people for writ large terms, if you want to join a specific org now, Lawrence O'Donnell might not have the politics, as far as I know, of the DSA. That's a separate conversation. But if somebody says, I'm a Muslim, whether they be an Indonesian Sufi or a, Hispanic lesbian in LA or an ISIS operative, yeah, you're a Muslim. You claim that term. I want more people claiming the terms that I support. Now, obviously, the next phase is there's the, what was the healthcare group that disappeared a couple of months ago? I forget the name of it. But look, yes, the word will get astroturfed. Elon Musk called himself a socialist, speaking of which, and we dunked on him and mocked him rightly for it. But someone like Lawrence O'Donnell reminding everybody that the bare minimum decency of American politics was created by our own extremely modest and moderate form of social democracy, is in fact a form of socialism, is both correct and empowering of all politics that flow from that tradition. And great. Then we can also have that battle. Hey, Lawrence, you're absolutely right that we need forms of socialism. You and I might disagree about to what extent, but maybe you have to go back and read your capital, because why hasn't that arrangement been able to last? You recognize that the Scandinavian model worked pretty well and things like Social Security and Medicare work very well. Why has there been this global backlash since the 70s of global deregulation and scaling back those arrangements? What does that say about the logic of markets? And then all of a sudden, they maybe they're on their back foot. Maybe they have to read and think a bit more and be a bit more rigorous in their analysis, which will lead them left. So that is a good thing, whatever way you frame it.